Hello, humans. Let's just get right into it. Why not? So, last time, we have this. And if you notice, there's a missile here flying straight into the airplane's face. So, yeah, that is what we did last time. So, first of all, I've had a few ideas for how we can make it a bit faster. So, first of all, this can be a bigger number. And that will mean each radar beam will step farther, and therefore will also draw less pixels, and it will therefore be faster. However, what we can also do, give me a second to find it. Since it is 3 times faster, we can increase that number. Decrease. So, let's try this. So yeah, I feel like this would be a bit more useful. And also, what I think we should do is when we ask for the radar in the missile object, I think we should be able to pass in the areas where the square where it should draw the positions of the objects. So if it wasn't in the box, then it won't run this code, which should make it faster. So to do that, we also need a box X, box Y, box width, and box height. So to be able to use that, we need to I think it would be good to make these variables. So box X equals, oh goodness, it all changed color. So it'd be this dot tx minus terrain width over 25, I think. And then the box height is this dot ty minus terrain height over 25. So let's just remove this, and then set this to box X, and then we would actually need to keep that for now at least. And then we can set this to box Y and remove this. And that should be box Y. So now what we need is box width, which would be, I believe, terrain width over 25 over 2, which would be 12.5. And then box H, which would be terrain height, also over 12.5. So what we can do here is remove this and hold on. I'm confusing myself a little. Yeah, we remove this and do box X plus box width. And I think we'd also have to change these. So then we would do the same here. Okay. So now we can pass in the box X, box Y, box width, and box height. And we would also have to calculate these values when we create the object. And when we ask for the first radar, we need to pass these values in too. So box X, box Y, box width, and box height. Okay, so now we need to give the radar function these values. So message.data index 8, message.data index 9, message.data index 10, message.data index 11. Okay. So now what we can do is say we can define a variable, let, I don't know, if checking box, and then I also remembered something. We would need to remove that because we're calculating less points. So you'd have to reduce the power more. So that's unrelated to what I'm doing now. But anyways, so we can just set if checking box to say if box X exists. If so, then set this to true. Otherwise, set this to false. So then we can say if checking box, wrap all of this in here, and then we can do and. When doing an AND statement, the browser won't calculate the statement at the other end of the AND if the first one is false. So that's why we have this variable. And it's a variable because instead of checking this every time every time this loops, you can just set it as a variable, and it'll only calculate this once. So then what we can do is, and x is greater than box x, and y is greater than box y, and x is less than box x plus box width, and y is less than box y plus box height. Okay, so hopefully this should do the same thing, but faster. Which it seems to be doing, which is good. Okay, never mind. Some broke there. Wait, no. Okay, something is messed up. Are there any errors? Ah. Box WX is not defined. Okay. That is on object.js line 241. There we go. Okay, let's try this. So it does seem to be faster, that's for sure. However, for some reason it stopped drawing the radar line. So where am I doing that? Okay, so I think I have a problem here. So I think I need to do if not checking box or all of this. So what this is saying is if checking box is true, then it'll invert this to false, which means the only way the OR statement will be true is if all of this is true. So that should work better. Which it seems to be doing. Which is good. So another thing I think I should do is say so here I'm calculating the distance. So I think what I can do, it's the best way to do this. I think it would be have distance be a variable. So let distance equals this. So you'd put distance here, but also say here, and distance is less than yeah, is less than terrain width over like 100. Okay, terrain width is not defined. Right, in the terrain it's just width. So now you can far more clearly see any radar objects here and here, because they won't draw if the distance is too far. And I feel like that distance should probably be a bit bigger. Okay, so that's very good. So anyways, the missile needs to explode if it's close to the target. So I think what we can do is what should we do here? So when it's drawing, if the distance between the x and y and the target x and target y, then we can have an explode function, and this will take in, and we'll say it'll explode at this dot x, this dot y, and with some sort of power, I presume. What should it be? Doesn't really matter. We can fine-tune this later. So now we need to define this explode function. So function explode x, y, and power. And we'd also have to say if the distance is less than some number, like terrain width over 100. So then, with the explode function, we can go through all the radar objects on the screen. Wait a minute. Let's just do I equals radar objects dot length minus 1. I is greater than or equal to 0, and I minus minus. I should really get into the habit of doing these backwards arrays. Not arrays, loops. Because they're faster. So, what I can do is say if the distance between radar objects index I dot x, I'm going to assume they all have an x, because, well, they do. radar objects index I dot y, and the x and y is less than, actually, we should probably set this distance to a variable, because then we can use it in doing the, I don't know, damage calculations. So if distance is less than or I guess like I don't know, distance times power. So if the distance is greater than, oh, what is the best way to do this? So I think what we can do is do power over distance, and then then the distance has to be proportional to the terrain. So you can do times terrain width over something. Just questioning if this is the best way to do this. I know the result I want, but I'm not 100% sure how to get it. So what I can do here is terrain width over distance. So that will get the distance in terms of width of the screen, or percent of width of the screen. So then we can do power divided by that, and say math.min of that formula and the power, so we don't get any weird divide by zero issues. And then I guess we can just do like radar objects index I dot damage, and then that formula. So then for every radar object, it will call a damage function, which we need to write. So in the radar object, we need some sort of this dot damage, and we would set that to some value that we can input. And then say the player will have or I guess we can call this health. I feel like that would be more intuitive for anyone reading the code. So, what you are doing now. Anyways, so we can say that players have a health of 100. Maybe enemies have a health of 20. And missiles have a health of 10. Again, we can fine-tune all of this later. So we need to write the damage function. So damage value, and so damage will be this dot health minus equals the value you're damaging by, and then we can say if this dot health is less than or equal to 0, then this dot to remove, we'll set that to false by default. But if it's less than 0, we'll say this dot to remove is true. So then we need to say if this dot to remove, then we can return any value really. Let's just say remove. And then we need to copy this to every show function. However, when this explodes, we also want it to remove. So then, we need to say, for every radar object, if the show function returns anything, then do radar objects dot splice I and 1. So then, what all of that will do is if the missile explodes, then it will call an explode function, and then the explode function will tell every radar object to take damage with the damage amount to this formula, and then the damage function, so I can find it, will subtract from the health the damage you give it, and if the health is less than 0, set to remove to true, and if to remove is true, then we have it return remove from whenever it renders, and then once it returns, and once the sketch.js will see that it has returned something, then it will remove it from the list. So let's try this. Okay, didn't work. Radar object is not defined, sketch.js 174. Okay, where is it? Ah, here it is. There we go. Okay, how much damage do I have now? What's it called? Radar objects. And I believe I'm the first one. So my health is now 19. Okay. The problem is it says my ID is 1, but my ID should be 0. So I don't think so. Well, first of all, the distance definitely has to be smaller before it explodes. So that is the player. Let's go way down. This is the missile. Let's make that 500. So now it should wait to get a bit closer before exploding. Okay, probably not that close. Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. So then, I believe the player object is its own thing, not in the radar objects list. So for the explode function to work, we would need to let's just call this objects, and we'll call that radar objects. And then we'll concatenate the player. So now the player should take damage. And by the way, actually never mind. I was going to ask how much damage the player took, but that isn't really valid here, because I only just wrote the code to do that. Anyways, how much damage did the player take? Barely any. That's nice. So, we need to fix that, obviously. So, first of all, I think we can say, give me a second. So we can say that 1 is probably too little power. That's more like it. Okay. How much damage now? Okay, still hardly any. All the radar objects have disappeared. So I think what I'm doing is making it so you take more damage the farther away you are, instead of less damage. At least that's my theory. So, okay. So I need to put that at the end. Sorry, I didn't show you the code. I moved this from here to here. Okay, let's see how much damage the player took now. Ah, yes, negative 100. That seems about right. because it exploded right on top, basically. So we can say what was the damage taken by the radar objects. They're all gone, so probably a bit too much damage. Okay, what can I do about that? I think I should probably divide this number by something. Well, they're all still there, which is good. However, they seem to have taken a whole lot of damage. And we want them to take basically 0 damage. How much damage did the player take? They still have a bunch of health left. So I think what we can do is increase this number and increase this number. So that means it will explode closer to the player, but the explosion won't spread very much. And it completely missed. Let's try again. Okay. So the player has a bunch of health again. What about the enemies? They took less damage. This whole thing doesn't seem to be working very well. So I think what we can do is divide by a smaller number, but say again, putting distance in a variable. And we can say if distance is less than what? 0.1. And this is relative to the width of the map. So honestly, this number could be smaller. Or it's proportional to the width of the map. Okay. So let's look at the player. And they still have 100 health. Okay. So that's not good. And the enemies also still have 100 health. So I think this distance number needs to be a bit bigger. And it completely missed again. Okay. So the player has lost all of their health. And the enemies still have all of their health. So I think that is what we would want. Okay. So now, guess what do we do now? What should we do now? Chaff. So, I should probably explain what chaff is. Chaff is dust that airplanes will throw into the air and reflect a huge amount of radar and that will make any radar guided, well, it'll basically jam radar. Give me a second. There's a little bit of noise downstairs. This is distracting me a little. Anyways, it will make a huge blob on your radar, essentially. So you don't know where your target actually is in space. So we need a chaff object. So class chaff and that extends a radar object. So for a constructor, we need an X, Y, and that's basically it, actually. So then, for the super, we need X, Y, and a radar cross-section. Say, let's do 1. Then, say chaff has a health of 10. So I guess, in this game you can explode chaff with a missile. I'm not sure if you'd want to do that, but I guess you can. So we would need a show function. And also exploding chaff isn't very realistic either. So in the show function we need if this dot to remove, then we would return it. And then all that chaff really does is sit there. So we would, I guess we could say this dot start time equals performance dot now. So then, and also we would have to return a value. And then we could say, or if the performance dot now minus the start time is less than some number, which should probably be random. So this dot time equals maybe 1,000 for like 5,000 milliseconds plus math dot random times 10,000. So that would give a range somewhere between 5 and 15 seconds that it stays in the air. So then that would need to be this dot time is less than, well, this dot performance dot now minus the start time, or the total time since the object was created, is less than the time. And then, so then it will remove it. So then, let's just create a chaff object. Let's just say radar objects dot push new chaff. Then the x would be, let's just put it on top of the player, 100, 100. Okay, let's see what this looks like. So it doesn't look like you can see it. So what's the issue? I'm just going to try reloading. Oh, what probably happened is the missile blew up the chaff. So, again, not terribly realistic, but whatever. So let's just get rid of this missile. And you still can't really see it. That's not very good. I'm being called. Sorry, just a spam call. Wonder why I only ever get spam calls while I'm live streaming. It's a little weird. Anyways, sorry for that. But why isn't it being drawn? That's super weird. Oh, wait a minute. This needs to be greater. It was probably being deleted immediately. Ah, yes. There it is. So I think what would be good is to make this, to make it so you can, so that the radar objects are drawn a bit bigger. So let's increase that to 40. Or divided by 40, I mean. I forgot to switch over to the code. Whatever. So yeah, that is very good. So now what we need is some way for players to be able to dump chaff, I guess. So where's the player object? Okay, here it is. So I guess we can make it the space button. So if keys dot space, I think that's what it would be called, then radar objects dot push new chaff. So then when the space button is pressed, then I'll dispense a bunch of chaff. So okay, where is it? Why isn't there any? Maybe it's not keys.space. Why is keys a function? Keys definitely works. I can turn. This is weird. Why can't I access the keys from the console? Well, that's weird. I'm just gonna look up some keycode stuff. Keycode.info, then space, then the event.key is space character. Okay. That's weird. I guess this would have to be a literal space character. Okay, let's try this. Oh yeah, can definitely see that. Very nice. So now what we need to do is add a cooldown, so you can't dispense chaff every frame. So we would need to do something like this dot chaff what should I call it? I don't know. Chaff time equals 0. And then we can say if you're pressing the space key and the chaff time, this dot chaff time is less than performance.now plus some number, maybe 30 seconds. Actually, that would have to be minus 30 seconds. And it would also probably be good if you dumped a bunch of chaff objects. There we go. Much better. So that should dispense 4 chaff objects, but we should probably give them an x and y position offset. So we'll just do math.random times the terrain width over some number, 100. Then we'll do that for the y too. Except let's call that terrain height. It doesn't really matter since I have them programmed to be the same. I can't really tell if it's working right. Oh yeah, there we go. It's definitely a bunch of chaff there. So yeah, that's good. Okay, I think we should increase the amount it will spread by. Okay, that's pretty good. So now, I think it would be good to get rid of the original chaff object. And we need some sort of graphic to tell, like some sort of GUI element to tell when you can dispense chaff, I guess. So I guess what we can do is have draw.beginPath, draw.arc, then I'll put that at 16, 16, and make it actually maybe 32, 32, and give that a radius of 24, and then do okay, math.pi times 2. So that will generate a circle in the corner up there eventually. There we go. So let's move that a bit farther away from the corner. Maybe 42, 42. Okay. And also, this is really weird. Why isn't this thing drawing properly? Or at all? It's because radar rotation doesn't have a this dot now. I forgot to switch to the code. Okay, it must be something else. I need to take the this dot off of that one too. Okay, much better. Except now we need to make the line less thick. So draw dot line width equals 2. Sure, let's see how this looks. Okay, that is much better. So now we need to make the graphic, the circle in the corner, actually a useful graphic to show whether you can drop chaff or not. So let's do another circle. Draw dot begin path, then draw dot arc, and then same position, same radius, 0, and math.pi times 2. Except this time we'll do a stroke, and we'll make this some other color. What color should we make it? Let's do red. There aren't many red things. So F00. So now you should see a red border, which you do. Let's make the red border a bit thicker. So draw dot line width. Set that to 4. No, that's yeah, much better. Okay. So now we need to do this times performance dot now minus player dot chaff time. And then all this needs to be divided by 30. So what this formula should generate is a number between 0 and 1, and 1, where 0 is you've just dispensed chaff, and 1 being you can dispense chaff now. The time is up. So then we multiply this by the angle to draw of the circle. So like if this was pi, then it would draw a half circle. So what this should do is make this, it's not working. Okay. First of all, this needs to be 30,000, because this is in milliseconds. So then, will this work? Okay, circle's full. And I've now just dispensed chaff. So that is very good. However, it doesn't seem to have reset the timer at all. So I can just do it again, which is not good. So what we need to do is, when we dispense chaff, we need to have this dot chaff time equal the performance dot now. So now once it's full, you can press space. I believe I've dispensed a bunch of chaff. Okay, let's do it again. So yeah, it looks like that works, right? Okay. So I think that is pretty good for today. So I guess I'll continue this next time. So I'll see you next time.